All right, well, he's setting up a little introduction. I'm Devin, and this is Kevin, and we worked on a student game at DePaul called Octodad. How many people here are familiar with Octodad? Okay, everyone seems to be. It's great. Great. It was a pretty successful student game. We were nominated for the IGF student. We didn't win, but it was great. So we graduated, and about half the team wanted to continue working on Octodad. So we decided to make a sequel, and we didn't have any money, so we wanted to figure out how to continue working on the game. And we didn't think the alpha funding model would really work for our game, because that's the model that Minecraft used where they released their development alpha while they're working on it. And that works really well for multiplayer games or more simulation type games, but I don't think it would really work well for a story-based game like ours. So Kickstarter, which I'm sure all of you guys know about now. I'm not Tim Schafer. We do not have $2 million, $4 million, however much. But we did launch a successful Kickstarter for our second game, Octodad, Death Is Catch. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. So we had to decide how much money to ask for on Kickstarter. We ended up going with $20,000, which we thought was the minimum amount. We weren't even going to pay ourselves. It was just really to pay for things like software licenses, voice acting, different fees for getting on the app stores, and going to things like PAX and other conferences, GDC, to show off the game. So we decided that was a good amount to kind of gauge how popular we were. See, if we couldn't raise $20,000, maybe it wasn't a worthwhile venture. So this is a graph. Let's go over. Yeah. Well, this is a graph of donations. As you can see, the first 2 days, way over on the left side, were the best days. We reached half of our goal in 2 days, and it just kind of trailed off after that. It ends up being kind of a linear line after that. We reached our goal 3/4 of the way through, which is really great. We're really excited. We ended up with $24,320 with about 600 backers. So, and 6,000 of that came from people just going to Kickstarter, which is kind of cool. So they didn't even hear about the game through us. Average amount was $40. We ended up having a couple different levels. You want to go to the prizes page here? So for $5, it was just basically like you'll get some art, and it's kind of like a thank you. There's only like 5 people that donated $5. Well, because the next level was $10, and we ended up having the game, basically a pre-order of the game for $10, and that was our most popular thing, obviously, which we were glad. And then for $25, we had just a T-shirt and no game, which there's a lot of people that want to support Octodad but don't like games or really don't think it's too hard, so they just bought the T-shirt. And then T-shirt and a game was a prize. We had all those prizes and like beta access was a $50 prize. We had a poster and a T-shirt, $50 in the game. And for $100, we had a very popular plushie. If you want to scroll down and show me what you look like. So John, one of those guys who worked on it, ended up actually sewing all of these, about 30 plushies by hand. And actually, it ended up not being worthwhile because the amount of time and money spent making them ended up costing about $100 to make a plushie. So I don't recommend doing that. But people love them, so that maybe it's worth the goodwill. We also had little, we found a company, 3D figurine. We found a company where you can print 3D models. So we also had those for $100. which was pretty good since they cost about $50 to make. And it's a pretty cool website. You can upload a 3D model with the texture and pick your size, basically, and they'll print it out for you. It's pretty awesome. So those were pretty good. And then I made a painting of Octodad. It was kind of a parody of a Teddy Roosevelt painting. And that was for $1,000. And Notch ended up buying it, which was really cool. So we had to mail a painting to Sweden. He was like the second person to donate, which was really exciting. I remember I woke up and I was like, someone got my painting, and I looked who it was, like, Marcus Pearson, that's awesome. So that was really cool. We had a costume we made for the original game that no one bought. $800, which makes sense because he really wants to talk about it. But it actually was the most talked about thing on news sites, so sometimes it's worthwhile if you're going to do Kickstarter to just have like a ridiculous prize because people will talk about it, and it's worthwhile even if no one spends $800 on a costume that like 6 people sweat all over. We would have sold them a new one, actually. It was the thing. What other things?
We had a couple digital items. 5 people ended up.
Oh, here's an example. Scott was the original mentor on Octodad, and
not what you gave away.
no,
The
we had a
smaller
smaller one.
version of this. But then I thought this. Which I thought, can you show the picture of this? I had no idea it was going to be this big. It's really cool, isn't it?
Yeah.
I thought it was going to be like this little thing with a flip phone, but it's nice.
Probably would have been hard to make it.
Oh yeah, the other items were for 500 and 200. For 200, you could have your name be part of any of the locations of the game, whether it's a grocery store or an office building or whatever we ended up doing. And then the $500, which we went through 5 of them. Basically, we asked the person to submit photos of themselves, and we're going to make a character of them in the game. Not necessarily an important character, but just them represented.
Yeah.
How many people bought this?
5.
Yeah. Yeah, never underestimate like really weird rich people on the internet, because there are a lot of them.
I think one of the interesting things that happened at the beginning was it was mostly kind of our friends and family donating to support, which I don't know if we underestimated the percent of them at the beginning, but they definitely helped to get kind of the flow going, because with a lot of Kickstarter projects, if you've seen it, it's been up for a while and nobody's donated. I think it's kind of off-putting to want to donate to a project that hasn't gained any traction. So I think a lot of the success was due to us bombarding like our friends and family on Facebook first, and then we ended up getting a lot of strangers and a lot of other new sites to pick up on it.
Yeah, you want to show that percentage of people. Yeah, so definitely like our Facebook and people we know like started off, and it's probably like I think a quarter of donations was people we knew.
Maybe a bit less. But at least at first it was the bulk of it.
So Kickstarter gives you a lot of good statistics. So as you see, like 25% were just direct links that we gave out. And a lot. The second one, the biggest, was Facebook, just from Octodad's Facebook and our personal Facebooks. So some of those are strangers that just like Octodad, but a lot of those were friends and family. And then Twitter was good. And then our biggest like news site was Rock Paper Shotgun, which gave us like almost 5% of our donors. We got on Joystick and Kotaku, and all those things helped a lot, which is really good. They didn't give us that many pledges and thanks for CityGames.com. It was a lot of work getting ready to Kickstarter. Like I made a painting, And yeah, selling all those dolls, like John didn't finish selling those dolls until March. We did Kickstarter like 6 months before that. So there's just a lot of time and money spent on the pledges.
A lot of things that we didn't keep in mind that a lot of other Kickstarters don't necessarily think about is the cost of actually producing the items and actually pricing them to a level that makes sense for like a donation. Because this is about, Kickstarter is mostly about people supporting projects, not necessarily buying the product unless it's finished. Some Kickstarters are that way, like the latest record-breaking one, the Pebble e-watch, is really just about selling that watch. So it makes sense that the prizes are the actual watches. But for games, it's harder to just sell just the game. You've got to have different levels so that people feel that they're appropriately rewarded for their donation. So what we didn't keep in mind for some of them was, well, how many hours is this going to cost to make, and how much are the materials, and how much is the shipping going to cost? We kind of did that well enough with like t-shirts and posters, I feel like.
Yeah, we planned pretty well. So we got $26,000, and after Amazon Kickstarter take a cut, so we ended up with about $19,000 after they took their cut. And then we spent probably around, I haven't added up
That's
this.
all right.
What?
They didn't take 5,000. They took about 8%.
Okay, so that was 22, I think. It was around like 22 afterwards, and then I guess it's like $3,000 spent on t-shirts. So we spent about $5 on t-shirts, and then mailing them was like $3, and we got $25 per t-shirt. So that was good for the US ones, but we ended up having free shipping, and we ended up underestimating how many international people would donate. So we had a few hundred international orders, and well, all of them were over $10 shipping. One of them was actually $20 shipping, so you can see how eventually if you just order a shirt that we're not barely making money, you have to mail a bunch of shirts to Romania or something. So a lot of the more recent Kickstarters have charged international people extra money for the shipping, and I recommend doing that because otherwise they can really get hit with the international shipping costs. Posters was actually really good for us. We went with 11 by 14, and if you do a small poster size like that, they can print it on a normal printer, and it really only cost us like 50 cents per poster, and shipping on it was like $4. So the poster ended up being a good deal for us. People liked it. This was a big cost. The dolls, like I said, didn't end up being very worthwhile.
One of the issues we had with the dolls was it was pretty much done by one person. So to have that many put on one person was kind of
A lot. Yeah, and we spent a lot of time making the trailer. We had the artists make the trailer for Kickstarter, which took a lot of time.
Well, I think that's another important point.
Yeah, you need to have a good video of some sort.
A lot of the successful Kickstarter trailers really, I think, get a lot of attention just because they have this professional polished video, whether that's of the game or some kind of animation, or of themselves, which is what a lot of the successful ones do. At least for me, when I back other projects, if the video doesn't have like, good quality sound or was just filmed with a webcam or something, it doesn't come off to me that the rest of the project is going to be successful. And I think you can tell a lot just from the presentation of the video and even the rest of the layout of the site, because we can choose kind of how we organize this information. And if it's not presented in a very good way, then you kind of can guess as to what the final product will be like.
Yeah, especially like the Kickstarter is really popular all of a sudden now, so maybe it's easier for a while at least to launch a Kickstarter. But we were lucky in that we had a successful first game, kind of proof of concept, and like that's really important. People don't know who you are, and if you can prove that you've done something, they're a lot more likely to throw money at you. And even like, I mean, the most popular $1 million Kickstarters recently were all like sequels or reimaginings of previous work they did. Like Wasteland 2 or the Tim Schafer game. So those are all people trusted, and they know that they can make that product. So it's important to have some sort of free game or some sort of background so people know that you're capable of doing it. Although there was a recent Kickstarter that was successful already, that was just a guy making an RPG Maker game for the first time. So maybe now's the time to just, like, I've never made a game, I want to make a Game Maker game, just give me money.
Well, the thing is, he had a really, like,
The
attractive
studio was
team.
pretty polished.
Yeah. Like, this is his first project using RPG Maker. He just started out at a game design college, and so wanted to make a JRPG. So he's using like a free tile set. He had like one concept art, but it was presented so well that it's very understandable that people got excited for the project. Because even if it was his first project, he did a really good job just presenting themselves. So having that kind of confidence apparently got him.
Yeah, and there's a lot of untapped niches like JRPGs, but there's not a lot of people making them.
Yeah. And especially since Adventure Game came out on Kickstarter,
There's just a lot of people on Kickstarter
Yeah.
paying attention nowhere before. So it's
like I don't know the exact numbers, but there was a substantial difference with donation amounts once Adventure Game came on Kickstarter. So it had a halo effect on all of these games.
Do you think that there's there's a gold rush period to Kickstarter that maybe is getting beyond the time where you get in, or do you think that now more people are aware of this, you have a bigger pool, that there's actually more money now?
I don't think anyone can really tell you that yet. I would say that right now it's still, I mean, it is a gold rush and there are more people, so it hasn't really hit the bubble or peaked yet. So now is the perfect time to get a Kickstarter. It might crash later, no one really knows if this is just a fluke and people are going to spend all of their money on Kickstarter this month and then no one's going to donate to anything the rest of the year because they've spent all their money. But, yeah.
To that point, I'm pretty sure the bubble will pop as soon as a big profile game fails. Because right now everybody's gambling and gambling seems return.
Yeah.
And as soon as those gambles start to not pay off, I think they're just going to go down significantly. And I do think crowdfunding is on the rise, but there's definitely like exponential growth right now. And so I think this is actually a really good time to jump in, assuming you can actually accomplish.
But the thing with that, did you read that article? Was that this week? The article about Kickstarter, like choosing a project. Did everybody see that? You know that? Anybody see that article? I saw it on Facebook. Nobody saw it. It was an article about choosing projects and how, and it was kind of, it seemed like the focus from the headline was kind of how to choose a project to back. But I think it really was about the people who go through Kickstarter and these projects that raised the money and didn't really estimate how much it was actually going to cost to make the game. So they underestimated the cost. They underestimated the cost of making the giveaways that went through it. So they didn't raise up enough money to actually fund the project.
I read that about the Starkman game.
It was a pretty good article, but I think it's a little bit different than that because when I funded, I mean, I don't care. I mean, I funded games that I don't actually want.
Like Octodad.
I got what I wanted. The plushie. But, I mean, I've done it to students' games, and I don't reply to some of the asking for information because I don't actually want to play the game. Yeah. But I want to fund that. And so it's like, there's a lot of people, like, I think Notch wants to, this is a way to help fund developers, not about, oh shit, I'm pissed off that I spent this money and I didn't get the game.
No, that's what Notch didn't even think we were going to send him a painting. Because it's really hard to email him. We kept emailing, like, what's your address? And then he's like, oh, I didn't even think you were going to send us a painting. That's my Notch voice.
I did too, like, my nice to reward that you expect to get the reward. Because like, I didn't even read it, I just gave you money.
Yeah.
So it's also a philanthropy kind of thing too, that I don't know that just because something crashes, I'm not sure that that's necessarily going to
Well, so the problem right now, and I've experienced this with my Kickstarter, is that people see it as purchasing a product, not as funding a team. And so I actually had some people complain because they're like, they thought they were getting something more than they were. They're like, why would they ever donate if they weren't getting a game? And he got really indignant.
And other people
And us.
for having a. Oh, that's great.
Yeah, because he donated less than it was to get the game. He didn't realize he wasn't getting the game. He got better.
But Boko also had a successful Kickstarter for his game,
Yes.
Oregon Trail.
Can you call
Zombie.
out the page?
Oregon Trail.
Sorry, I'm interrupting all the time.
You have a question, Nick?
Yeah, well, I thought it was pretty smart with what Double Fine did because they didn't actually like promise anything.
Yeah,
But I thought it
fail.
was really smart that they added the documentary part of it to
Yeah.
kind of, it would still give people something even if everything else went down the toilet.
Yeah, that was really smart, and then they're doing a really good job with the documentary. So I watched the first one last night. I was surprised that there was gonna be 20 minutes of it already. I was like, wow, it's like really well done. I feel like I already like got my $10 worth. I haven't got it.
I think oversaturation may be a bigger problem for it. That like if everybody's trying to raise money for every game, you know, if people start trying to kickstart their capstone projects and things.
Yeah, well, and a lot of it, like I mean, like your initial market is your friends and family, and they're gonna start getting tired of hearing about that all the time.
I think it's kind of like all the other ways that people are trying to fund games. Like you have the Humble Indie Bundle, and then all the kind of copycat bundles, and then pay what you want things. I don't know. I think there may be something after Kickstarter that will also kind of take away from the advantages of Kickstarter. Like a lot of people think, well, why isn't there more of Kickstarter based on investments so that they actually get a return on the product? So that could be something next for games.
That's true. Yeah, and then the government is looking at ways to do more sort of Kickstarter, like crowdfunding type investments. I know a couple people have talking to.
Yeah.
For
Also went to school.
I was a bit wondering about that, like quote insurance. Like sometimes some people could use this as a quick cash scheme. You know, they're like, oh, we did this project, and all of a sudden, you know, they suddenly get quiet about it, and they could run away with this money. So
When that happens, that will be the biggest blow to Kickstarter because people will lose faith in that. So if a high-profile thing like that happens, where they could get screwed, that will be a really big blow.
because I mean, they could just remain quiet for a while, and people would forget about donating like $20,000 for this project. And they could
Yeah, there was a zombie game. What was it? I forget what it's called. There's a zombie like open world game that did an alpha funding model that kind of happened to, where they.
Subway?
Huh?
Project Subway?
Yeah, they were all.
It was a perfect opportunity.
Yeah, and they didn't know if they were going to continue for a while, and they got a huge negative response, partly because they didn't handle it very well on Twitter, and partly because people were dicks. So they had all the people donate, and they said, well, we didn't have backups of everything. Like the whole game's been robbed. Like all of our source code, all of our computers. We don't know if we're going to continue. And like they had thousands of people who outfunded it that were pissed off, and it had a horrible negative backlash. They said now they're continuing to work on it, and it kind of smoothed out, but it could have been really bad. Always use some sort of SVN that's not hosted in your apartment.
So how many rounds did you have to go through with the Kickstarter? I mean, just to get it accepted?
It's very easy. Pretty much everyone gets accepted. unless
Yeah, I think it used to be harder to get accepted, but we just submitted we spent a while describing our prizes, and you basically have to describe what your prizes are and the amount of money you think you want, and then you get approved, and you can change all that. Which is another way that people could end up scamming. I know there was Kickstarter where some guy was trying to launch Kickstarter to own Kickstarter. It's like, if you give me $1 million, I will buy Kickstarter and I will make better stuff. And somehow that passed through them, which is a little scary, but it was pretty funny.
Okay, so you just sent them an email?
Yeah, you make an account.
You just get accepted?
Yeah, you just make an account, and then there's a submission process, and you usually get accepted within a couple of days, unless it's just horrible. But or maybe even then, I don't know. I think they're rejected. So.
Any other questions?
Okay.
Have you dealt with the taxes or the income yet?
Yeah, I actually did the taxes, and all of your profits are considered income. So we ended up paying around $3,000 in taxes. I deducted everything we spent on prizes. And so keep track of everything you spend so you can deduct it. But yeah, it's taxed like normal income. So.
Are you doing this as an LLC, or did you do it? You tie someone to it?
No, we did it. We actually incorporated as a C corp. So you got taxed that way. But if it's tied to someone, whoever receives the money, I think Amazon started this year where they have to send a tax report. So whoever officially puts in their either their social security number or their company ID, tax ID number, then gets hit with that. So it's definitely planned for that. Maybe tax on that.
On our Kickstarter, the $15 reward is the game itself. We haven't actually decided how much we're going to sell the game for, but we're kind of worried if we sell the game for less than that, are the people who pledge $50 going to kill us?
That's a good question.
I think they probably wouldn't go that far. But I do think there's definitely ways you can kind of fix that, whether you give it to them early or you give them some kind of bonus content. Because I think that's something we may have to deal with, whether we think, well, if we're going to sell it for the same price that they could have pre-ordered from, then maybe they should get something a little extra.
Well, that's already the Xenonauts, that problem. Xenonauts was pre-selling for, I think, 15 or 20, and they dropped it to 10 or 15. And I can't remember the rewards, but I believe they offered, they basically developed extra rewards for people who kickstarted. So it's kind of a, sorry, we have to drop the price, but we'll give you this instead. But yeah, so if you find Xenonauts and follow them, you probably see how they manage that and how the community reacted.
Yeah, it's hard to analyze because like you don't know whether you should charge more because like it's a donation model, you're trying to raise money, or if it should like be a deal, like they're pre-ordering with some risk so they get the game for cheaper. Because we might sell the game for 15 instead of we did the pre-order for 10, but we might also make an iPad version and sell that for $5. So it's pricing is a difficult subject.
So for mine, the game is going to be selling for like $3, and the only tier that got you the game and up was 20. The way we offset that is you get the game and the the credits, which people love. That's free. They get a copy of the soundtrack, that costs me nothing, and then they get a little bit of the physical goods, which cost me like $1. So we still end up making tons off of it. They feel good about getting all this stuff because digital content is so deliciously free. Like you want to pack it in every reward tier.
Yeah, when Jake Elliott did his Kickstarter, like they had the game only built for $40, but you got a poster and all this other postcards and type of stuff.
Can you actually use some kind of site which would actually print and deliver something for you? Like in mass scale, so it would be cheaper. Because if you're doing it yourself, it's going to cost a hell of money. But
yeah,
maybe there are some sites which
you could.
upload some image and they'll just print and deliver something.
There are sites that do that. I don't know that much about them, but I know they exist. And then you could do like actually for the statues, we ended up doing that. Because we just sent them a spreadsheet of all the addresses, and they just mailed everything for us, which was really helpful. So the statues were a good deal for us.
How much does it cost actually? I'm just curious.
For what?
For a statue.
Yeah, like that was like $45, $50 for that. It's like a 6-inch statue, and then we had it at the $100 level.
There are services that do things like print mugs and things like that that are on demand. So you could set that up and where you can count that cost into the fee, and it only makes enough for the prize.
Yeah, we actually after we opened up a store, and that's what we're using Spreadshirt. So we don't have to keep any inventory, but like if we buy the shirts ourselves, it only costs us $5. But this way, like they cost between like $10 to $15, and then is how much the company takes, so we have to charge more for the t-shirts then, but we don't have to worry about them, so it's easier. So for like a $10 to $15 shirt, we can charge $20 for, and then we don't sell as many, but we don't have to worry about it, so it's convenient. So you could probably set something up like that, and they do bulk orders, so it'd be easier. You don't have to like worry about shipping everything. Because I went to the UPS store, the girls there hated me because I always brought in like 30 things going to different countries. Any other questions?
There's a podcast too that features some people from Octodad, Phil from Octodad, Ryan from...
Yeah, it's the My Giant podcast.
There you go. Yeah, so I don't know what's the...
Google My
Google
Giant
My
Podcast.
Giant podcast.